While hiking in the wilderness, a 70-year-old man stumbled upon an abandoned dump truck deep in the woods. And it wasn't just any truck. It was a rare military spec model used by the Australian Army. This immediately piqued Bruce's interest. He opened the door and saw the engine was still there. A quick look under the hood revealed the batteries were missing. He immediately went back home to gather all the tools he would need to get this rare military truck running and drive it out. He had learned that this truck was an international model imported from the US by the Australian Army in the 1970s. You can see the brand from the logo on the front. Being a purpose-built military vehicle, its quality was never in doubt. Bruce also found out that after the truck was decommissioned from the Army, it was bought by a local mine owner. But because its payload capacity wasn't large enough for their needs, the mining company eventually abandoned it. It sat here, forgotten, for a staggering 16 years. The tires were completely flat and covered in cracks, but a quick inspection of the mainframe showed no major issues. Bruce was also surprised to find that the truck was equipped with winches on both the front and the rear, which looked to be factory installed. Next, he checked the dump bed. It hadn't been eaten away by rust over the years and had even developed its own little ecosystem. He also wanted to check the differentials underneath, but with the flat tires, the truck was too low to the ground to get under, so he couldn't see much. He gave the truck another once-over, but didn't find anything useful, just some old gloves and 2 plastic bottles. Since he hadn't inspected the cab closely on his first visit, Bruce took another look. The seat foam had completely rotted away, but thankfully the roof's rust-proofing had held up well, and it was in great shape. The various gauges on the dash were also remarkably well preserved. However, Bruce couldn't make heads or tails of the numerous levers and shifters in the cab. He'd have to figure those out later. Under the hood was a Perkins diesel engine, and its condition looked surprisingly good. Getting it started shouldn't be too difficult. But when he opened the radiator cap, it was a different story. The fluid inside was topped with a layer of rust. The oil on the dipstick didn't look great either, but at least there was no sign of water. After getting a general idea of the engine's condition, Bruce went back into the cab. To get better access for the repairs, he removed the engine cover, or doghouse. Inside, he saw several more control levers. No wonder even an experienced guy like Bruce was confused. Given the winches on the truck, he figured at least one of them must control those. He wiped the dust off the dashboard, hoping to find some clues on the data plates, but didn't find any useful information. It was time to get to work. Bruce started by removing the air filter housing. A large amount of dirt and sand poured out of the cover, which didn't bode well for the filter inside. And sure enough, the filter was caked in dirt. The good news is that this type of filter is easy to clean. He could just blow the dirt out later. With the air filter sorted, Bruce crawled underneath the truck to drain the old engine oil. The oil pan was covered in a thick layer of caked-on mud, which he had to scrape off with a wire brush. Once he cleaned around the drain plug, he could unscrew it and let the oil out. The oil that came out was pitch black, which to Bruce was actually great news. It meant there was still oil in the engine. While the oil was draining, Bruce grabbed a hose to check the fuel tanks. When he pulled the hose out, it was dripping with fluid. He removed the filler screen and discovered the tank was completely full of diesel. You have to love cheap fuel prices back in the day. A tank this big would cost a fortune to fill now. He checked the second tank and it was the same story. Completely full. This was an absolutely fantastic start for Bruce. With the fuel situation sorted, Bruce pulled out a new oil filter. It was clear he had come prepared. He collected the old oil to take back for proper disposal, doing his part for the environment. He then crawled back under the truck to remove the old oil filter and collect the remaining oil. After cleaning the area, he reinstalled the drain plug. He pre-lubricated the gasket on the new filter with a bit of oil and filled the new filter with fresh oil to minimize air in the system. Then he installed it on the engine. While he was under there, he tried to check for any oil leaks, but the engine was so grimy that he couldn't pinpoint any sources. He decided to leave that for another day. Next, it was time to add fresh oil.
The oil filler cap on the engine was also covered in dirt, which he had to clean off to prevent any from getting inside. He carefully unscrewed the cap, wiped the area clean, and inserted a funnel. Bruce added several large jugs of oil, so much that he lost track. He had to check the dipstick to see if it was enough for the initial startup. The level was good, so he put the dipstick back. Being a perfectionist, Bruce also took the time to thoroughly clean the grimy oil filler cap before putting it back on. He also reinstalled the cleaned air filter. Just then, he noticed something odd in the engine bay, a single disconnected wire. He wasn't sure if it would affect his plans. Now it was time to get familiar with the controls in the cab. It was his first time in a truck like this, so he had no idea what all the buttons did. After a few minutes of exploring, he went back outside to add a diesel additive to the fuel tanks. Since the fuel was at least a decade old, this was a smart move for both fuel quality and engine protection. Next came the coolant. Bruce suddenly remembered the 2 plastic bottles he had found earlier. He poured some of the liquid out to inspect it. After determining it was safe to use, he added it to the radiator. Now it was time to tackle the battery situation. The original batteries were long gone and the terminals were heavily oxidized. Bruce used a wire brush to clean them up for a better connection. With that done, he connected the batteries he brought with him. Bruce hopped back in the cab, shifted the truck into neutral, and pressed the start button. Nothing. The engine was completely silent. Even an experienced guy like Bruce was stumped. He started randomly flipping switches and pressing buttons, hoping to find the solution. Then it hit him. Trucks like this often have a battery master switch or an isolator. He asked his cameraman to look around the truck, and sure enough, next to the fuel tank, he found a switch. When he turned it, he heard a faint click from the engine bay. Back in the cab, the wipers started moving. This was a good chance to figure out what some of the switches did. Then he reached into the engine bay and found the manual lift pump. By pumping the lever, he could prime the fuel system and send diesel to the injection pump. With all the prep work done, it was time to repeatedly press the start button and try to wake the engine that had been sleeping for over a decade. But after several minutes of trying, there was still no progress. It was time to change tactics. He had his cameraman bring him a wrench. While pressing the start button, he used the wrench to tap on the starter motor. The vibration can sometimes help the brushes inside make contact, which has a good chance of bringing it back to life.
After countless attempts, he finally got a response. The engine fan started to turn. This was a great sign. But from the sound in the alternator, Bruce realized the truck likely needed a 24-volt system to start, and they were only providing 12 volts. They had to solve the voltage problem. He connected the 2 batteries he brought in series and used jumper cables to connect them. He had to clean the rusty terminals again for a good connection. With both ends connected, it was the moment of truth. This time you could clearly hear the fuel pump whirring and the dashboard lights came on. The moment he pressed the start button, the engine roared to life. As he gave it some throttle, the engine responded with an excited roar, and thick black smoke billowed from the exhaust stack. From the powerful sound, it was clear the engine was in excellent health. Even after sitting for over a decade, it was still in its prime. Bruce was ecstatic. What surprised him even more was that after running for a few minutes, the engine quieted down and the smoke cleared. An engine like this is a priceless find for any enthusiast. The only downside was that he hadn't brought an air compressor, so the truck would have to spend one more night here. He'd have to come back the next day to drive it out. He confirmed all the gauges on the dash were working before shutting the engine off. There were still a few things to sort out. The next morning, Bruce was back in the woods. This time, he brought 2 smaller batteries that would fit in the battery box. After connecting them, he started the engine and took the time to reconnect and adjust the throttle linkage since he would be driving the truck home. The adjusted throttle was incredibly responsive. Now to deal with the tires. He used his compressor to air up each of the flat tires, and amazingly, even after all these years, they all held air. With the tires sorted, Bruce turned his attention to the brake system. This International truck has a separate master cylinder for the left and right sides.
It didn't need a major overhaul, he just had to top off the brake fluid. With all the pre-drive checks complete, he started the truck one more time to test the brakes. After confirming they worked, he shut it off. The space in the woods was tight, and the truck couldn't make the turn. He had to move a pile of dead logs blocking the path. It was a good thing his camera vehicle had a winch, otherwise moving the logs would have been nearly impossible. With the path cleared, it was time to begin the journey home. This decommissioned 6x6 military truck now truly belonged to Bruce. In his hands, it's sure to begin a new chapter in its long story. And that's where we'll end the tale of this international truck for today. We'll see you next time.